Couple of other things I want to get to. We are set up for the Red River rivalry between Texas and Oklahoma. Here's what I'll say about Sark and Texas. Every year, at least to this point of the season, they come off a game where they look really, really good and then maybe lose a game they shouldn't. They haven't done that yet, Paul. They're still perfect. And I think you could make the argument based on this season alone on merit. You could argue they're the number one ranked team in the country because they've looked good, and we'll see it this weekend against Oklahoma.
As you frame the game, it's obviously a lot of history to it, considering this is the last time not in the SEC. Last year was just one of the worst days in Oklahoma history. And, how that plays into this, no idea. Truly have no idea whether that's a factor or not. I'm not a big believer in those things, Matt. But if Texas continues here, they're in a phenomenal position. They're no longer, hey, this is a joke about Texas being back. I mean, they look legitimately back. And I just wish this game was, I wish they were already in the SEC, because it just seems like a waste for these two schools who have been scorned and treated shabbily by the Big 12 in the schedule making to give that league a showcase.
Yeah, and they're going to get it. And with what the Big 12 is looking at now, it's look, I would bet we see these two teams again in the Big 12 championship, because there isn't divisions and there aren't divisions in the Big 12. And so now you really have to look at it. And I've started trying to piece it together because this thing's wide open. 1 through 18 of the rankings could probably find themselves in the conversation for a college football playoff spot. But when you look at it, Paul, the Big 12 can't afford more than one loss if you're Texas or Oklahoma. And so now you have to start piecing this thing together for conferences around the country. Which teams are we IDing as the one-loss teams that could get into the playoff mix?
Yeah, and I know a lot of my friends in the SEC are worried about about that scenario where you get a 2-loss Alabama team beating Georgia,
right?
And there's no easy answer if that happens, and a lot of chaos prevails elsewhere. But it's been a fascinating season, and I know that everybody has primarily talked about Prime, but the storylines out west and across the country are downright phenomenal, considering what's already been determined. And you mentioned LSU and Clemson.
I want to do out west. It's a good segue to Southern Cal and Colorado. This is a pretty easy question. Who looks the part? Does USC look worse for letting Colorado back in it? Or does Colorado look better for not giving up and making this an onside kick game?
I think USC's defense is a complete fraud. I mean, I was told this week by one of our data people how much better they are.
No,
they're not. So I mean that USC is not winning the national championship. I mean, let's just get that established right now. I mean, for Caleb Williams to do what he's doing and have to sit there at the end of the game against a team that they are superior to on every level and have to hold on for an onside kick is absurd.
Yeah, look, this game was 34-7 at one point, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, this could be 62-10 in a heartbeat.
Right.
And so I'm with you. USC's got all the glitz, they've got all the glamour. They've got the stars. They have everything they need to be a top flight billing. You're going to have to play defense when you're going to have to either contend with Oregon or Washington or some of these other schools. And this got Lincoln Riley back when he was in Oklahoma. They had run through the regular season. They get to the college football playoff and couldn't stop anyone. And so that's what's left for USC after that game. And Paul, Notre Dame Duke. I want to touch on that. That was, I mean, for that game to happen at 7:30 and a long day, you're like, God, keep me awake, because this was not the greatest game.
Yeah, well, fortunately, you were just coming down from LSU Ole Miss,
right?
You knew there was nothing left. I mean, you knew Alabama was going to be a snoozer, and can you stay awake till the end? If those of us who had the choice, and yeah, I mean, good for Notre Dame. You were able to punch one in against Duke, which is a really nice story. And would have been an even better story had they won, but
they had it. They had it. That sequence at the end of the game was brutal.
Yeah. I'm not particularly, Notre Dame can do whatever it wants the rest of the way. I'll probably not be all that interested other than the Southern Cal game.
We're going to end it on this one. We're going to go back to our Sports Center days. Okay. First, I'm going to ask you to write the headline for the month of September. What is the Paul Finebaum headline for September?
Well, certainly being a former headline writer in my first day on the job, I was so bad at it, they moved me off. But yeah, I mean, it has to start with prime. And I don't think there's any way that you can say other than, prime time, wins the day, because it was the story of the month. There were so many other stories that happened, but we will always remember the air that Deion Sanders took out of the rest of college football for 5 weeks.
I would agree. And when you look at it, they're right. We could parse so many different storylines that had to do with actual football. But I'm with you. September went to Folsom Field, Boulder, and Prime. Now, as we sit here October 1st, write me the headline for October.
Yeah, I think it's going to remain out west. I really believe it's Oregon and Washington. I don't have the schedule in my head at the moment.
2 weeks, I believe.
So, I mean, I think that game may very well be the most important game of the year in college football, ahead of all these games that we promoted and thought in the SEC. And I think the second part of that is going to be watching the SEC. In the month of, I gently brought this up on the SEC network yesterday. Somebody asked me about the story of September. I said, well, the SEC, a little underwhelming, commissioners over there. But it was more than a little underwhelming. But I'm not writing the SEC off yet, but Georgia to me is the second story of the college football season. Is, what's up with them? Is this Rip Van Winkle snooze a manifestation of a terrible schedule, or is it real? They've still come back twice against very subpar teams, but I still give them credit, and I'll try not to sound like a high school coach at a pep rally, but that does help a team. When you can come back home and away, it will give you the necessary elements that if you're ever in a serious up against an upper division team later on.
Yeah, and Georgia, by the way, going into, again, we got this pre-new AP Top 25. Georgia was the only SEC team in the top 10. That's it, the only team. And I think that'll change this week with Alabama, might find their way up there back into the top 10. But yeah, that's for me. If I'm writing a headline for October, it's buckle up, because it's going to be wide open. Pacific Northwest, for some reason, is dominating college football with those 4 teams up there: Oregon, Oregon State, Washington State. But if you look at what's ahead of us, buckle up, because I find that this year there's going to be more chaos come college football playoff rankings, which happen, I think, on the first, I think it's Halloween.
Yeah.
This is the most chaotic thing we've seen in a while, because this thing appears to be wide open. So we will enjoy it on day 1 of October until day 31 of October. For the great Paul Finebaum, I'm Matt Barrie. Everyone wear a seatbelt. Paul, wear a seatbelt this month, because it's going to get wild.
I'm buckled in.
Give me something I can feel. Like